Digital forensics lab setup. In a digital forensics lab is where you do the majority of your work. You want to make sure to be as prepared as possible for anything that comes your way. And the first step in that preparation is going to be building a business case. With the help of management staff, you can create a business plan that's going to guide everyone through each stage of starting and managing the lab. The business case should consist of a justification in which essential questions such as what type of digital investigation services are going to be conducted, or how will you advertise your services to customers. These kinds of questions are necessary to justify the means to the outcome. Now, the budget development, of course, is of the utmost importance. You want to be as accurate as possible with this. And a good tool to use is an Excel spreadsheet program to figure out and extrapolate future costs. Not having a proper budget can cause delays and even the inability to start the lab. Facility cost. Now, in starting a new lab, you have to keep in mind that startup cost is going to use up the majority of the budget. So, the main thing that you want to consider is how large of a lab is going to be needed. Questions such as how many digital forensic examiners are needed and what are the furniture costs. As far as hardware and software requirements, again, those are dictated by what type of investigation services will be conducted in the lab. Miscellaneous budget is kind of self-explanatory. Needs can be anything from general office supplies to specific needs for daily operation. Next is approval and acquisition. You have to put those negotiation skills to the test on that one and get the plan approved. Once you get your plans approved, uh, then next comes the implementation stage. This is where everything starts to come to fruition. You want to make sure to give proper timelines for completion. After everything is set up, you want to now do the acceptance testing. You want to make sure that everything is working properly, as well as making sure you receive everything and everything was installed properly. And then next is the correction for acceptance. So basically, you want to make sure to have contingency plans put in place for those bumps in the road that come up and that you were not expecting. And then lastly, of course, is a production. Now the lab is open for business. Lab accreditation and acquiring certification and training. When it comes to this portion, you want to make sure to do your research, do your due diligence. There are many accreditations offered and it can become costly, so you want to make sure to check all the requirements of those accreditations. And then some of these can help you come up with some define policies, processes, and prescribed procedures. You want to ensure the integrity of your work by following the guidelines you chose and set, as well as having some good, readily available resources. For example, the ANAB stresses that each lab should maintain an up to date library of resources in its field. Next is the floor plan and budget. These are going to depend, of course, on what size of a lab is needed. Once you figure that out, you can start figuring out safety. For example, is your lab going to have or is it going to have a mid-sized to large-sized lab? You will need to have two exits. Essentially, the ideal setup in a lab is to have two forensic workstations plus one non-forensic workstation with internet. You also want to consider that a work area containing 3 workstations requires approximately 150 square feet of space. You also need to consider space for all of your storage, evidence storage. And then next, you want to select a basic forensic workstation. When acquiring workstations, you want to try to get the most powerful processor and the most RAM and disk storage available to improve the production of digital examinations. You also have to keep in mind the budget because startup costs, like I said previously, take a large portion of it. So you want to make sure you don't go all out and get the latest and greatest and most expensive things out there, as far as equipment or software. You need to research what is going to be most useful in your lab. And a good way to do that is by looking at annual uniform crime reports, generated at the federal, state, and local level. And these can give you an idea of the types and frequencies of crimes committed. You also want to keep in mind equipment and software updates. A good tip to remember is that computer components are designed to last 18 to 36 months in normal business operations, and new versions of OSs and applications that take up more disk space are released frequently.